I'm back. This is what I just did this afternoon and morning. Shaping the blocks, and then I've just glued them to the mold. So here's what it looks like. Let me show you first. And I followed those tips that I talked about in my previous video that I uploaded today. The first of the two, about the grain direction and so the grain direction on the corner blocks needs to be pointing down from the top to the back on the inside face, because what that then means is the grain direction from the back, when you flip it over, from the back to the top will be pointing down. And that's good because when you're shaping the blocks, you always have the top flat against the workbench and you're chiseling or gouging downwards towards the top, because that keeps everything perpendicular. And so while the grain on the inside surface is down, the grain direction, that means the easiest way that the chisel will go down the block. And so what I'm going to have at the end is the correct grain direction when I flip it over and start shaping the blocks. Hopefully it will be smoother from the back down to the top as I'm using the chisel and the gouge. And I have made the blocks so that the grain orientation is pointing towards the tip of the corner. And you see here how little of the block you actually end up using in the end. The tricky thing was when they give you this, it's about a 6-inch 30 millimeter by 30 millimeter block of wood, but their grain direction is not diagonal. It's horizontal. And so you have to do some creative cutting of the block in the beginning so that your right angles of the block are in a different spot so that you end up with your grain pointing towards the corners. At first I didn't think I could do it because it felt like the blocks were too small, but I did it. And then another thing I do before I glue it is then I make sure that the side, this side here, is parallel with where the clamp is going to be, so that the clamp will sit securely. And then on the back block is just the same as the corner blocks. You want the grain direction to be on the inside, pointing down from the top to the back. Because again, you're going to be flipping it over and carving the block from the back to the top. And that grain direction on the external side is opposite. Oh no, that was the top. That's where you have to do it the opposite way. So, I don't think you can see it here, but see on that external side, after I did the test with the chisel, That's the direction of the grain that made it easiest to chisel from the top to the back. And that's what you want with the top block, because that's the direction you will be chiseling when you're doing the mortise. You're going to be attacking it from the top down towards the back of the block. The tail block, it doesn't matter. So you do it the same as the corner blocks, with the grain direction being smoothest on the inside. I don't know if you can see my arrow there. So to glue this, I use Titebond, 2 little dots on the tail block and neck block, 1 little dot in the center on the corner blocks. Because if you put too much, it just makes it so much harder for you to remove the mold later. And Titebond is plenty strong. I've learned that through experience with trying to do it with fish glue before, and my blocks would always fall off. Whereas Titebond, it makes a bond stronger than the wood itself. That's what they say. So 1 dot is sufficient. And then these are my cheap Harbor Freight clamps, which work well for little things. And this mold is raised up 9 millimeters off the surface. So it gives me 9 millimeters on one side of the mold that the block is sticking up, and 9 millimeters on the other side, because my linings will be 7 millimeters wide. Okay, and I just pulled out my big 2 foot by 4 foot board that I use with this big, I think it's like a floor sanding belt, 120 grit. Because after this dries, what you do is you start leveling the blocks to their proper dimensions. Right now, all the blocks are 33 millimeters tall. But in the end, you want it to be, I think it goes from 29 millimeters tall at the neck block end, gradually increasing to 31 millimeters at the tail end. But that's to come later. Okay. Each one I'm doing, I'm getting a little bit wiser in how to do it, I hope. I hope this carries through.